What's a real-life glitch you've experienced that you still can't explain? Story 1. Dreamt I was on a train, which crashed. The guy in front of me was decapitated. The train car caught on fire before plunging off a bridge into water. I drowned, woke up in a panic, realized I wasn't dead, and fell back asleep. Had the exact same dream, and again and again. Next day, dragging my tired but into work, wondering why my mind decided to play a dream like a bad VCR, I passed the volunteer desk at work with its daily pile of newspapers. The evening before a train had crashed before plunging off a bridge into a river. Later it came out the crash produced some horrific injuries, including decapitation. Edit to add, I was a very, very broke young adult and did not own a TV until a few years after this dream. Story 2. This is a repost. Then again, it fits. I'm not the kind of person to have a great many friends, but those friends I do keep are sacred to me. So one evening I was getting out of Rotterdam subway block to go to my apartment near there, when I see an old friend, one I haven't seen in the flesh in a few years, heading into the subway. I call out his name. He turns, waves, and makes this call me gesture. Then the doors close and the subway rides off. 30 seconds later, my phone rings. It was my friend who told me he'd just seen me get in a normal train head used to get home from the bar. Apparently, I had grinned, waved, gesture call me. The door shut and the train drove off. I live in Rotterdam. He lived in Enschede. That's just over 200 kilometers apart, or about 125 miles. Story 3. I've posted this one before. This happened about 6 years ago. Myself and 3 other friends went to a concert at the biggest venue in Mexico City. One of my friends is a woman. This is important for the story. So the concert ended, and we agreed on a meet-up point outside the venue, so we could pick a cab and leave together. There were about 100K people there, so we inevitably got separated. So we went to the meet-up point. We waited for my friend for about 15 minutes when we started to get worried, so we started calling her phone. However, due to the sheer amount of people present at the venue trying to make phone calls, the lines get congested and the calls won't go out or they won't be received. So we started to get really worried. After another 10 minutes trying to call her, I get a phone call from her. She sounded extremely gloomy and sad. She said, "Hey, Sebas Viju, I'm alright, I'm already in my place. Everything is okay." I got immediately freaked out, as this was impossible. She lived 2 hours away, and not even an hour had gone by. We get super freaked out and try to call her and start flagging some cops down, because being Mexico City, I thought she had been kidnapped. Then, 30 seconds after the call, she comes out of the crowd looking as chilled as she could possibly look. I yell at her, telling her what was wrong with her, etc., etc. The thing is, she looked so surprised at this. She denies having made any phone call she tried, but couldn't get a signal. We don't believe her, so we look at her phone, and there was no record of the call having been made. After this, I take my phone to show her the call, and there was no record of the call having been received either. To this day, I have no idea what happened, because the voice on the other end of the phone was hers, and she knew details about me and my name. Edit, many of you are suggesting I was high AF and hallucinated this. None of us took drugs at concert. We only had 1 or 2 overpriced beers. Story 4. A classic summer thunderstorm was fast approaching. It was super windy out, but not yet raining. I've always been fascinated by weather, so I went outside and sat in a lawn chair. I was sitting in the middle of my yard, a good 10 feet from anything, when I was pelted in the face with a crouton. It was gusty, but not at the moment I was struck. I took it inside to show my family, and no one cared. I never came up with a reasonable explanation. Story 5. When I was about 6 or 7, my cat died. It was the first time I experienced death, and it really shook me up. Then, about a month later, I saw my cat walk into my room clear as day. I wasn't freaked out. I didn't question it. I reached down to pet him, and suddenly he was gone. This happened a few more times until we got 2 new cats. Each time it happened, the fact he was dead never crossed my mind. Story 6. So a long time ago, I was fed up with life and stepped off a curb in front of a dump truck, turned, looked at the grill of the truck, closed my eyes, opened them to the truck passing me by, and me back up on the curb. Still don't understand it, and I don't know if I want to. Story 7. In high school, I did archery, and one day at shooting practice, one of the new kids shot a bullseye. Exactly. Dead center. This isn't that remarkable. You fire enough arrows, sooner or later one of them will be a bullseye, but everyone was being nice and congratulating him. Suddenly, a voice in my head, which sounded like me, but didn't feel like me, said, "Yeah, but Lynn's about to do the same thing." And I could see in my mind's eye, Lynn firing an arrow, it flying through the air and hitting a dead center bullseye. Then, maybe 3 or 4 seconds later, I watch as Lynn fires an arrow, and it flies in exactly the trajectory I'd seen in my head and lands with a thwack bullseye. Everyone is over-congratulating Lynn now. She was new too, and I'm standing off to the side wondering what just happened. It happened one more time a month or 2 later too. I saw something happen in my head exactly as it did a few seconds later. I've forgotten the details of the second time though, and it's never happened since. Story 8. My mom told me this in my parents' bedroom was this really large master closet. It was technically just one closet, but it had two doors going into it. Between the two doors was a high shelf and a hanging rod for clothes. So it functioned like two separate walk-in closets, but you could walk from one to the other by ducking under any clothes hung in the middle. One night, she was in her side of the closet, and she saw through the gap between the shelf and the clothes rod my dad walk into his side of the closet. She heard the metal coat hangers sliding as he looked for something to wear and saw the clothes in the middle sway as they were brushed from the other side. From her side of the closet, she started talking to him about something random. Then she heard the bathroom door open. She poked her head out of the closet to see my dad, clearly just emerging from the shower, walked to look into his side of the closet, and nothing. And up until the moment she poked her head out to look at the bathroom door, she will swear to you she could still see my dad in that closet. Story 9. As a kid, shot a rubber band off my fingers at a soccer goal. Rubber band, unbroken, was looped around one of the strings of the soccer goal. Absolutely no clue how that happened. Story 10. It was unexplained for a little bit, but it was freaky, and as far as I know, an actual glitch. I was driving home from, I think, the bookstore and suddenly realized the street signs were missing letters, like a stop sign would read STP. Then other things I saw began missing parts, but without any space for the missing stuff to be in, like if reality was a piece of paper that was being folded to hide things. I managed to drive home like this, barely keeping myself from freaking out. Got home and things got back to normal. Then the worst headache of my entire life hit me. Yep, my first migraine ever, of luckily only 2 so far. With years apart, I'd heard people talk about migraine symptoms like colors and blinking lights and smudges that impair your vision a little, stuff like that. Nobody had ever mentioned a symptom could be reality warping around you. Story 11. Girlfriend and I were talking on our front lawn. Mid-sentence, I felt something evil to my left. I stopped talking and turned. She did too. Saw some sort of shadowy humanoid around 30 feet away. Light was enough that it was obviously not a person. She asked, "Do you see that?" She didn't know why I stopped talking. I nodded. Without another word, we both ran inside. No idea what it was. I would call it a trick of the light, but it was out of my vision when I originally got that feeling. Story 12. I forgot about this until I read this post, but it's something I still don't understand. It was summer and my grandfather, grandmother, mom, and I were working in the garden. It's pretty big and there's a lot of grass to be mowed and stuff like that. After all the work, my mom would always ask me to get some soda because everyone was thirsty from working. It was in the evening, but still pretty warm. After everyone had their soda, my mom asked me to put it back in the fridge, which was in the basement, used as a living area. Only a small part of storage. So I go to the basement. And please note the room with the fridge is like 20 to 30 seconds from the exit, and you have to pass 2 doors with those flappy anti-fly curtains. I put the soda in the fridge, close the fridge, and walk out. Seems normal, right? Except I had to do this 3 times. The soda kept reappearing whenever I put in the fridge and turned my back on it. Everyone was outside, and there was only 1 bottle of soda in the room. To this day, I am still confused over what happened. There have probably been more moments like this, but this is the one I remember the most. Edit TLDR, my soda kept reappearing after I kept putting it in the fridge 3 times. Story 13. My friend and I were once outside when he was changing his girlfriend's car battery. It was at night, and there was a lot of fog out. Suddenly, there was a flash of white light in his neighborhood for like half a second. It couldn't have come from a porch light or something. Everything was engulfed by the light. We looked around and didn't see anything that could have caused it. There were no cars. None of his neighbors had turned on any lights. Nothing. To this day, we still believe a Terminator was sent back in time to his neighborhood. Story 14. One morning I woke up, rolled out of bed, brushed, had breakfast as usual, and then went about my day off. I lounged around the house a little bit, played my DS for a bit, plinked away on my guitar. A lazy morning. Suddenly I'm driving in my car a couple towns over on my way to the BN. I pulled over and tried to collect my thoughts. I remembered waking up and getting ready, watering plants, cleaning my stuff up in the living room, then hopping in my car. But I also remembered doing all of the stuff from that other version of that morning. So I had 2 separate days that suddenly merged into one and kept both memories. Story 15. My brother got shot in the stomach, and the bullet bounced off and fell on the ground. Apparently it had traveled a long distance and lost a lot of velocity. It left a welt, but that was it. Story 16. I once woke up sitting on top of football goalposts. No clue how I got there. It was about 6 a.m., and there was a girl running around the track that surrounded the football field. Always wondered what she thought I was doing up there. Must have been weird, creepy for her, but she clearly was confident enough to continue her run. Story 17. Back when I was sharing a shitty flat with my best mate, we scraped together enough poo change for a 6-pack. In the morning I came out, and there were 6 empties on the coffee table and 1 mystery beer still in the fridge. It was our magic beer. but one day I forgot it was magic and drank it. The end. Story 18. One time during a run, I had an out-of-body experience. I was just running along, and then I blinked, and I was seeing everything as if I was standing over my own shoulder. I could see the back of my head, and all around me, but my head wasn't moving. It was just super weird. Story 19. Our mattress did not have those little rope handles on. It absolutely did not. AS of last week. While I was stripping the sheets and putting on fresh ones, it does. I'm too afraid to check again. Story 20. When I was about 13 to 14, I went on a trip to another state with my church youth group. We drove through the country for hours in a region I had never been to before. Eventually, we ended up in a small town. I was looking out the window and realized I knew this town, as if I had lived there before. Like, I knew the post office would be a few blocks ahead on the right. And then sure enough, there it was weirder. I knew what the buildings would look like. I predicted the location of all the landmarks in the town before we were close enough to see them, and all of the predictions were correct. It was very spooky and got the other kids on the bus a little riled up. Story 21. Years ago, I was driving home late from work, and as I was waiting in an intersection, my whole car jerked violently to the right. It actually lifted off the ground and sent my drink flying. I looked up and saw the light was green, so I restarted the car manual transmission. It stalled and started to go through and pull over to check for damage. At that moment, a drunk woman in an SUV ran the red light and smashed into a power transformer. If whatever happened to me hadn't, I would have been T-boned on my driver door. I called 911 and stayed to give my statement, but I think the woman died as the ambulance did not have sirens on when it left. Story 22. I once bought 3 rotisserie chickens on clearance, 2 each. I picked at one of them on the drive home. Get home, lock my car for once. I rarely lock it. I have 2 chickens with me and a pizza, and I was too lazy to grab the 3rd chicken. It was like 10 outside. I wasn't worried about spoilage. Figured I'd grab in the morning. I know for sure I left that chicken on the floor of my car in front of the passenger seat. Yet the next morning, it was gone, vanished, no sign of it anywhere. Where did my chicken go? Story 23. I drove nearly 14 miles on autopilot, like cross-eyed, zoned out in thought, and didn't once veer off the road. Also, a friend of mine managed to phase through a locked door and had a knock on it till his dad woke up and let him in. It was a sliding door with a trigger latch, no way to lock it and go outside. Story 24. I had left my cell phone. This was 2006. So it was an LG flip phone on the charger when I went to work. After an 8-hour shift, I got home and grabbed it. There was a voicemail from an unknown number. I listened to it, and it was a man saying he had just received a call from my number and wanted to make sure it wasn't someone he knew that needed something. I checked the call log, and sure enough, at 2 p.m., about 3 hours before I was home, my phone called the number. I called him back and asked if someone said anything. At this point, I was convinced someone broke in. He said he could hear someone talking in the background, but it wasn't something he could understand. That's why he called back. I never figured out if it was a polite intruder using my phone without stealing anything or something more spiritual. I'm not a believer in ghosts, but quite a few unexplainable things happen in that house. Story 25. I was in college and home for break or some holiday. My dad was out at the grocery store picking up several last-minute items while my mom is wrapping up her beauty routine. I'm ready to go, sitting at our kitchen table scrolling through my phone. To set the scene, my position at our kitchen table looks out the back door, down the steps, to our driveway with garages in the basement. I hear a rumbling below me in the garage and think I must have missed my dad pulling in. I finish up my phone browsing and hear grocery bags crinkling behind me down the basement stairs. So I get up and start heading down to help him unload, and as I turn the corner, there is no movement, no sound, and no grocery bags sitting by the door waiting to be carried upstairs. So I go open the garage door, and his side is empty. I just close the door and headed back to my seat at the table. As I sit back down, my dad's truck whips in the driveway and starts backing towards the garage. I wait, hear the grocery bags, and head downstairs. Hey, Dad, need some help? Story 26. When I was young, I was lying on my bed in the dark when I heard my cat meowing at the door. This was not unusual, as she often wanted to sleep with me. I opened the door and saw the shadow of my cat enter the room. Then she just stood by the door, still meowing. This was not usual. I reached out to scoop her up and just hit wall. My cat was outside the whole time. I don't believe in ghosts, and I definitely wasn't asleep, so I don't know what happened. That was the only time I experienced anything like that. Story 27. When I was young, maybe 7, after my mom got a divorce from my dad, we lived in this creepy apartment. I think kids have a sense about creepy, and I think I knew from the start that something was off about this apartment. Little backstory, and probably part of why it always creeped me out. My mom got a really good deal on it because she agreed to fix it up a little, nothing crazy, just basically cleaning out the stuff the old tenant had left and slapping some fresh paint on the walls. The previous tenant had vanished one day. The owner said that rent time came and went, and the tenant never paid. So after calling numerous times, they finally went into the apartment, and the tenant was gone. but left all of their stuff. So the way this apartment was set up, when you entered the front door, a stairway was immediately to your left, a door to a bedroom immediately to your right, and then straight ahead was a hallway with an open living room and kitchen at the end. So if you're standing in the doorway, you can see into the bedroom, up the stairs, and into the living room. Once you enter the living room, you can see the full kitchen. One day, I was playing a computer game in the downstairs bedroom and started to get hungry. I walked out of the bedroom, calling for my mom as I walked down the hallway. No answer when I rounded the corner into the kitchen. She wasn't there. I went back down the hallway and started up the stairs. But as I was about halfway up, I felt a really creepy feeling and decided to go back down the stairs, all the while still calling for her. At the bottom of the stairs, I opened the front door and called for her with no response. Went back down the hall to open the sliding glass back door. This was an apartment complex, so we had no backyard, just a little deck and nothing. Panicking, I went back down the hall towards the original bedroom I was in, trying to figure out what to do. I decided to grab the phone to call someone, walk back down the hall to get it, and there stands my mother cooking dinner in the kitchen. When I asked her where Shed been, she said Shed been there the whole time. I asked why she didn't answer when I was calling for her, or if she saw me opening the back door, and she said no. It's been probably about 15 or so years, and I still think about this incident periodically. That apartment was creepy, as like the day we moved out, we found this hidden room type thing, disguised by a vent cover that we'd never seen in the 2 years we lived there. I had recurring nightmares of the same man, and there were a few times our front door either wouldn't lock or we'd get up in the morning to it standing open. So glad we didn't live there for longer than we had to. Story 28, a friend of mine that I hadn't spoken to in a while, and I booked the exact same resort at the exact same time on the other side of the world, Florida, without even knowing the other one was planning to go on a trip. Story 29, I was around 7 years old running through the backyard of a friend's house. Around my neck was a cloth cord, and hanging from was a bronze stamp medallion that I had gotten at a recent Renaissance fair. As I was running, I tripped like the klutz I was and fell forward, the necklace and medallion flying off my neck and landing a few feet in front of me. I started to get up and looked at the necklace, but then froze. It was sinking into the ground. The metal part was swallowed first, and then the rest of the cord with it. I was so shocked I couldn't move. I was able to snap out of it and lunge forward, grasping at the last piece of the cloth before it was pulled under. I sat staring and poking at the ground for a good 10 minutes after that. It was completely solid. I never saw it again and have no idea what happened. Story 30, I traveled back to my hometown to visit relatives. On second day back, I went to bed, blinked, and suddenly it was daylight. Apparently, I had slept an entire 36 hours. But my relatives remembered me doing various activities, washing dishes, eating dinner, shopping, etc., though nobody actually saw me around. Story 31 too come to mind. The first is on occasion, I'll have dreams of events that later happen exactly as they did in the dream. Normally, it's nothing major, just a conversation that goes exactly how it did in the dream or something similar. The other was much worse, which is I ate a pot brownie that contained bath salts. I was unaware of this fact. While I wouldn't call it a glitch, reality did break for me for about 12 hours, and I was convinced I was in for a while. Story 32, I was meeting someone at the train station from Craigslist to buy my old phone for $200. He let me know when he was going to arrive and what he would be wearing. I got there, saw a guy that matched the description, and showed him the phone. He took a look, gave me $200, and went on his way. As I started walking back home, I got a phone call from the original buyer telling me he just got the train station and was looking for me. I had no idea what to say. Who the did I sell my phone to? Story 33, once in college. Some friends and I drove out of the city and down a country road in a secluded area so we could smoke pot and cruise around. Didn't really have a secure place to smoke near campus, and we were dumb enough to think it was safer in a moving vehicle. So after nightfall, we are on our way headed back to town, and it seems out of nowhere we are in this massive traffic jam on this country road. There are tons of cars in front of us, and even cars trying to pass on the shoulder. Cars were racing past, going the other way, which really didn't lead anywhere. There just seemed to be a kind of pandemonium, like we were driving around a sports stadium after a game. There were no lights from a police car or fire truck. No evidence of a crash. Nothing. We were literally screaming because it was so weird. It all came out of nowhere. It was a 2-lane road that didn't lead to anywhere, yet there were tons of cars jammed up. Then it just seemed like all the cars were gone. The traffic let up, and we were cruising along again, but I don't remember seeing cars in front of us or behind anymore. It was like we were alone on the road. We lost it and couldn't stop talking about it for like a week. I'd like to say it was a glitch, but it's probably because we were smoking some good stuff. Story 34. When I was about 11 years old, I was playing with my younger sister and 2 friends at the bottom of their garden. It was a semi-rural area, and there was a cow field that stretched away for about a mile, and then there was a motorway. There was no visual change in our surroundings, yet suddenly the cows stopped making any sound at all, and we couldn't hear the traffic on the motorway, which was usually constant. We all froze as we sensed something. The air felt heavy, as if it was pushing down on us, and we all felt a prickly heat on any exposed skin. It lasted a good 10 seconds, and then stopped as fast as it had started. The cows went crazy, and the traffic sounds returned. We all agreed we felt it. I wonder what strange weather systems were at play that day. Story 35, I'm literally just going to copy and paste part of another one of my comments here, because it's the most inexplicable of my stories. Other notable stories are very similar, but feature a very large neon-colored broom and popcorn not in the same story. Story one day, I was driving with my son, 3, and daughter, infant. Son was in a car seat, all the way in the back of my van. Daughter was in the middle. I know my son had boots on, because there was no snow on the ground, so I tried to put his shoes on, and he screamed murder until he got boots. We went directly to the van. When we got to our destination, a grocery store less than 10 minutes away, he no longer had boots on. Now, keep in mind that the windows in the back of my van don't open at all. Neither do the windows in the middle, only the ones in the front, and since it was winter, I definitely didn't open those. After a quick search in the parking lot with no results, we obviously had to go back home cause he couldn't walk around the store in socks. When we got back home, I searched the car properly. After about 20 minutes, it wasn't even about managing to get to the grocery store. It was the principle of the thing. I was going to find those boots. I removed car seats, an entire seat from the van. I searched every possible space I could access, let alone my strapped-in 3-year-old. I even searched everywhere in between the spot. I put his boots on in the car. I never found those boots. Story 36, my mom came home from work once and saw me walk out of my room. She called out to me, and I didn't answer. I didn't answer because I was at my friend's house. Story 37, this is a small one, but I bought a new TV. The next day, one of the lunch ladies at my high school, who knew me by name, asked, "How are you enjoying your new TV?" I replied that it was pretty nice and went on like normal. Only an hour later did I realize that she mentioned the TV I just bought the day before. I felt some Truman Show-esque vibes. I asked her how she knew the next day, and she didn't seem to know what I meant. Pretty sure my grandma told her about it, and she just mentioned it for some small talk, but it screwed me up for the full day. Story 38, a friend of mine, and I used to joke about how our backpacks had black holes, which was why we could all our stuff in it. A good while into this, we found each other's stuff in our backpacks. This happened multiple times, too. After it kept happening, we reasoned out that it was most likely that we were dropping our stuff into the other's backpack without noticing, but the chances of that were lower than the frequency at which it was happening. What really screamed at me that something was wrong was when 3 of his pens in his pen collection ended up not in my backpack, but in the pocket of my jacket weeks after he lost them. I like to think that whenever we come to agree upon something, it'll happen, which is why I'm glad we both also joke about and discuss becoming gods and our plans when we do. Unfortunately, these occurrences have ceased lately, so I guess the magic has worn. Story 39, I had an abusive childhood. One time, in middle school, I had a friend over a very rare occurrence for me. My friend and I were about to enter the house and go up to my room. Now, the door we were going through connected to the laundry room, which has the washer-dryer like right in front of the door. So if you're doing laundry, sometimes the door will hit you. I had a premonition, nothing else to call it. I put my hand on the door handle, and in a premonition of the exact words, and way my stepmother would scream at me the moment I opened the door, I turned to my friend and said, "When I open this door, my mom will be there, and she will be very upset." He looked super confused, but sure enough, I opened the door, and she yelled and screamed at me exactly the way I saw. And then we both ran up to my room. I don't believe in the supernatural, religion, the occult, ghosts, or anything like that at all. But anytime I start to get 100 atheistic neckbeard in my own head, I remember that, and it makes me think it's not bulletproof, because she had yelled at me for that several times. But I'll never forget the absolute certainty I had at that moment of what exactly was about to happen. I've never been more certain of anything in my life since. Word of my friend out too. Story 40, I had a weird one recently, where it felt as if I had slightly time-traveled. I was watching an interview on YouTube of a politician. It was on an issue I had very little knowledge on by a person I had no prior knowledge of. Then during the interview, it kind of started again, where the video I was watching went back in time by about 2 minutes. I was watching this, I felt, wow. I feel I've heard all this before, then I assumed it was an intense déjà vu, but then I passed the video and word for word repeated everything he was about to say next. I checked the timeline of the video, and I had not rewound it or seen it again. I rewound the same video to see if the footage had just been looped or something, but it hadn't. It was as if I quickly peered into the future to see the video, then watched it again. It was really strange. Story 41, went out of state to a casino with my family. The casino had 2 floors. It kind of looked like a mall. You could see the top floor just by looking up, and you got to the top floor by using an escalator. The bathroom was on the top floor, and my mom went to the bathroom alone. She was gone for about 15 minutes before I went looking for her. I checked the restroom, and she wasn't in there. The rest of my family, 5 people, spread out to look for her and met back by the Escalator, and no one could find her. I was holding her phone for her, so I couldn't call her. I saw a suspicious-looking man standing by the ladies' room the entire time we were looking, and I thought maybe he killed her and stuffed her in the trash, or maybe he killed her in the men's room irrational when I'm in payback mode. So I checked there too. Finally, after another few minutes, my mom comes down the escalator looking zoned out. I was so relieved to see her. She was tripping out because she said she took the escalator and it took her to another building across the street, and then back to where we were even though she got on the right escalator. I swear there was only 2, one going up and another going down. The crazy part was that the buildings weren't even connected at all. Story 42, when I used to do acid, it would leak into electronics. I don't mean I pressed wrong buttons, or I was just too out of it to make it work. I mean half of my phone screen would glitch out for a few seconds, then just crash. If I was playing a video game, the level wouldn't load, and an error screen in Japanese would come up and stay there until it was rebooted. It got so frequent that my friends wouldn't let me near any of their DJ equipment, nor was I allowed to go anywhere near the sound system at parties in college. Story 43, my house called me. I left my office for a birthday dinner, came back around 8 p.m. to pick up flowers. My direct dial office phone was ringing. Caller ID identified it as my own house, in which I live alone. My then boyfriend saw the number on the phone too. Picked up the phone, nothing, raised home, alarm still set, cat sound asleep. It was a house built in 1927 and had a friendly ghost. Oh, and she, I'm sure it was a lady ghost, put out a place setting for me overnight once. She used butcher knives instead of fork and knife, but they were mostly in the right place. True story. Story 44, mine's not as crazy as a lot of the others here, but when I was young, my sister and I launched Polly Pockets from the top of our ceiling fan. Once, one of them flew off and hit the wall above a door. I went over to retrieve it, gone. What was even more weird was that there was a chip of paint that came off the wall where the Polly Pocket hit, but no trace of the darn Polly Pocket. A few months back, I was going through old storage. At the bottom of the plastic bin was the same Polly Pocket, or at least very darn similar. Weird how the world with us. Story 45, I dream about places I have never visited, and then proceed to accidentally arrive at those places within a couple weeks. The first couple times it happened, I wrote it off as a fluke, and that I had just not remembered being in those places before. Then it started happening in places that there was no conceivable possibility of me ever visiting. It has gotten to the point to where I am calling my parents and asking if we ever visited obscure locations when I was a child. Story 46, I used to have these very vivid dreams that were all part of an overall story. They took place in an alternate universe with magic and demons, and myself and some friends. These people weren't real. Mind you, were freedom fighters in the war. The dreams were never in order, and I wrote them down after waking up, figuring out where they placed on the timeline by taking note of particular details. For instance, in some of the dreams, I was always alone and was incredibly powerful. In others, I was pretty much just an average kid and had all those friends around me as we snuck around trying to rescue POWs. One night, I had a particularly dark dream where one of my friends' name was Luke was sitting on a rooftop threatening to jump. I went up there to try and talk him out of it, and we ended up having a long conversation about how he couldn't see the point in fighting anymore now that she's dead. So this was pretty surprising. The she that was being referred to was his girlfriend, Maddie. In the later dreams in the timeline, she was never there. So this sort of explained why she disappeared from the dreams. That was in the Christmas break in 2009 when school started in 2010. I met Maddie for the first time when she started at my school. She looked exactly the same, had the same laugh, same mannerisms and everything. I definitely had never met her before, and yet there she was, not just alive, but actually real. Update people have inspired me to sort out my notes. I spent a lot of time updating them yesterday and clarifying things. It's turned into a really long document, and I still have to transfer some things from the original handwritten journal, but it should be all complete in a couple days. Like I said, I'm surprised people are interested. Every other time I mention this on the net, nobody paid any attention. I guess it was just the right timing and topic. Update 2, still working on it. I've fixed up everything that was written before, and am now up to writing up everything from the photos I have of the original notes. They'll put in thoughts and context and stuff as I go. I think with all the pictures of the notes, my commentary, and the actual retelling of the dreams, it's ended up at about 37 pages already. I don't have a huge amount left, maybe another 12 or so pages to go. Not being sarcastic with that. 12 pages won't take too long to write once I actually start doing it. Update 3, this isn't finished, but you can see most of it there. I got a bit sidetracked with uni, and I'm not sure when I'll get back to it after all.